All right, hey everybody, time for a rant. Time for a rant. Time for a video and another hater rant that I've been meaning to do for a long time, but never got around to doing it. And now it's time for the Mortal Kombat series of videos. And this time we're taking a look at one of my all-time favorite and best video games and fighting games of all time, Mortal Kombat 4. Yeah, this is me attacking haters of Mortal Kombat 4. I think I have a review or accidental playthrough on my channel. I have to re-record that and upload it in the future. I accidentally recorded the comic book and gameplay footage over the actual quote-unquote review. But this is not about the review this time. As you can see by the title, this is me ranting on haters of what I consider to be the best Mortal Kombat game of all time. When it comes to Mortal Kombat games, in my opinion, Mortal Kombat's 1, 4, 7, 8, 6, which is Deception, and 11, the most recent one, and X are the quote unquote best when it came to visuals, storytelling, and more importantly gameplay, with 7 and 8 being the best at both worlds when it came to gameplay and storytelling, what it should be. But this is Mortal Kombat 4. But in most recent times, this game gets a lot of unneeded flack and unneeded hate for its what most people would call ridiculous CGI character endings, which I thought was, and to this day still is, the coolest thing ever. To this day, I am still blown away by the 3D models of this video game. Before I continue with the what you call it, to see the larger webcam portion, the link will be in the description box below. This is just a short narration version, and this is also aimed at people who, if you don't like Mortal Kombat 4, more power to you. This is aimed at people who just be talking crap for the sake of talking crap, or who criticize Mortal Kombat 4 for various flaws, but support these same things in the newer, crappier NetherRealm trilogy, or criticize storylines or elements of this to try to hype up the NetherRealm, trilogy, or the original, I guess, the 2D trilogy, quote unquote, before this, with BS revisionist history. I'm attacking those people. But going back to the endings, you know how awesome it was walking into an arcade in '97 and seeing characters walk around interacting with each other, Mortal Kombat characters walking around interacting and fighting each other in a 3D quote unquote environment with actual voice acting, versus the old days of just versus 1 through 3, which were just storyboard cutscenes with writings on them. So yeah, then they over exaggerate how bad some of these endings are, and compare them to the NetherRealm trilogy, which the NetherRealm trilogy obviously had a much bigger budget and hired real actual voice actors, real high quality voice actors and actors to voice the characters, whereas Mortal Kombat 4 was most of the developers and the motion capture actors from the 2D era, from the quote unquote 2D era, the live action mocap actors from the 2D era, performing most of the voices for the quote unquote characters. And some of these, like Fujin, Raiden, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, the first Kitana, the one that appears in Kung Lao and Liu Kang's ending was awesome. The one in her ending was laughingly bad. Then when it was laughingly bad, the character Jarek, it was quote unquote, it was funny. His iconic endings with Jax and Sonya were hilarious. And yeah, then of course most of them are reacting to the Nintendo 64, which the Nintendo 64, they have awesome gameplay footage, but the quote unquote arcade, the video, the cutscenes were atrocious and discussed. The Nintendo 64, when it came to its video output, it was weak compared to the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn. and Sega Saturn. Then of course you had but if you watch the PlayStation and PC versions, those look cool. Those look much better, and it's almost perfected when you watch the superior Gold Dreamcast quote unquote version. So over exaggerating and then writing the game off because of that, when the game has some of the most fast paced there's some of the most fast paced action. It's pretty much the same as the first three, just more realistic, more quote unquote realistic. I like that live action style with the 2D actors was awesome. Was awesome the first time, in my opinion, only the first time in Mortal Kombat 1. But after Mortal Kombat 2, that style was stale. We got to 95 and 6. Okay, games were 3D by that point. Not to mention video games like Street Fighter Alpha. They showed you how Street Fighter Alpha and King of Fighters. They showed you how cool 2D fighters could be, and they were much easier to play. Why would I sit here and play Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, especially 2 and 3, which were extremely hard? When I could play Street Fighter, and which looks much better, and also is also much easier to play. Yeah, video games, they should never be too hard like Mortal Kombat's 2 and 3 were. 2 and 3. They also should never be quote unquote too. They should never be too easy. They should be somewhere in the middle, which is what Mortal Kombat is 1, 4, 7, 8, and every game after Mortal Kombat 4 quote unquote was. They weren't too easy, but they weren't too hard. Quote unquote easy. And this during the mid 90s when Mortal Kombat was losing strength. Everyone likes to act like Mortal Kombat was always at its peak. It never had a down period. Mortal Kombat peaked with quote unquote 2. During the 3 era, people hated it for being the same for being dated and behind its time. The live action actors recorded behind a 2D and in front of a 2D and 3D background. A hand drawn 2D and later 3D background. That was old. That was old by that quote unquote people wanted 3D. Mortal Kombat 2, especially 3, should have been a 3D quote unquote title, and that caused Mortal Kombat to lose strength up until Deadly Alliance. Which revamped the gameplay and quote unquote storyline for a new generation, for a new console generation. Did Mortal Kombat return to its former glory? They were seen as a relic of the past. They were behind every other fighting game at the quote unquote time, and only 4 and the Conquest television series was keeping Mortal Kombat alive. Quote unquote alive. Then storyline for this quote unquote game. This storyline was better than that crappy NetherRealm era Mortal Kombat X storyline, which that Mortal Kombat X is an awesome game, but that was one of the worst storylines. That game had the worst storyline I've ever seen in a video game, not just fighters. A video game period where the day was saved and freeing revenants. You freed the revenants instead of just killing Quan Chi like it was in the original timeline, except replace Quan Chi with Unaga. All you had to do was stomp Quan Chi's nuts. Stomping a man's nuts was the key to saving the day and freeing the revenants. And you got Shinnok, who got unleashed by Quan Chi twice just to get his butt kicked. First by Johnny Cage and worse by Cassie Cage, quote unquote later. The most garbage and most failed Earthrealm invasion ever. Mortal Kombat 4 barely even had a storyline. It was just a bunch of cutscenes, bios, and a prequel comic, comic and a CGI ending cutscenes, and they told a much better, more consistent story than with Shinnok. This plan didn't work either, but Shinnok and Quan Chi, with the aid of Tanya, invaded and conquered Edenia. Then quote unquote enslaved hypnotized Sindel and conquered Edenia. Then turned their attention to the heavens, the elder gods, for revenge for banishing Shinnok to the NetherRealm in the first place. Then quote unquote Raiden got the people who saved the world in the last game to accompany him to Edenia to save Earthrealm and liberate Edenia from Shinnok, the Raiden and Fujin and the Earth Gods managed to send Shinnok back to Adenia, and back in Adenia, Liu Kang managed to defeat Shinnok as Quan Chi had his real amulet and banished him back to the nether realm. That plan didn't work either, but that was a much smarter plan than what was quote unquote here in this game. But also going back to the difficulty, I like how they made it easy for beginning Mortal Kombat players, because like I said, not only was the game the same thing, it was extremely hard. It was one thing if the game was easier to play, but it was extremely hard. Now, I was a huge Mortal Kombat fan and sat there trying to master all these combos and get to the top of that tournament ladder. But the casual Gore wasn't gonna do that. And that caused Mortal Kombat to lose strength in the quote unquote mid quote unquote 90s. And people are trying to say we're talking about Mortal Kombat because of 2011. No, we're talking about it because of the 3D era. We would not have the superior 2011, which in my opinion was crap, 2011, if it wasn't for the 3D quote unquote era before it. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the long webcam quote unquote version. But this was just a short narration to show you what I'm talking about. You already shown what I'm talking about. So right now, get ready. Mortal Kombat 4 coming next.